My name is Anna, and I am 24 years old. Until recently, I lived alone in a small, expensive apartment, working from home as a freelance graphic designer. My family consisted of my parents and my older sister, Clara, who is 26 years old. We weren't exactly close. After I graduated from college 2 years ago, I basically kept my distance from all of them. The only contact we had was when I sent birthday greeting messages, and that was it. My mother had a habit of always comparing me to Clara, and my father never seemed to care much about what I was doing with my life. Clara was the golden daughter. She was outgoing, competent, and always got what she wanted. I was just the quiet one who stayed out of everyone's way. Honestly, I preferred it that way. Less drama. I had been renting this tiny one-bedroom apartment for 2 years, paying much more than it was worth. But it was mine. I had my small office set up in the corner of the bedroom and managed to earn decent money doing design work for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me the freedom I wanted. Then, one day, completely out of the blue, my grandfather called me. He's my mother's father, and we always had a very good relationship when I was younger. He was the only person in the family who never made me feel like I wasn't good enough. "Anna, dear, I need to talk to you about something important," he said when I answered the phone. "Can you come visit me this weekend?" I was surprised. Grandpa lived about an hour from here in a very nice residential neighborhood, in the same house he's owned for about 30 years. He rarely asked anyone to visit him. We usually only heard from him at family gatherings. So, on Saturday, I drove to his house. The house was exactly as I remembered it from when I was a child. A large 2-story house with 4 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, and a basement. It was far too big for just him, but he never wanted to move. When I arrived, he made coffee and we sat in the living room. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. "Anna, I'll be direct with you," he said. "I'm getting old, and I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I've been thinking about this for months, and I've made a decision." I nodded, not knowing where this was going. I found a very good private retirement home about 20 minutes from here. It's expensive, but I have savings and I can afford it. The thing is, I don't want this house to sit empty. I want you to live here, Anna. The house is paid off, and you're the only one in the family who really has their life together. Your parents are still paying the mortgage on that small apartment, and Clara, he shook his head. Well, Clara has her own problems. I stared at him. "Grandpa, are you serious? You want me to live here?" "Completely serious. You work from home, don't you? This place has plenty of space. You could set up a real office, have room to breathe. What do you think?" I couldn't believe it. This house was huge compared to my apartment, and it was in a great neighborhood. Plus, I had always loved this place. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Grandpa." He smiled. "Great. I'm moving to the retirement home next week. You can start bringing your things whenever you want." Within a few days, I packed up my entire apartment and moved into Grandpa's house. I chose the master bedroom as mine. It was spacious and had large windows that let in a lot of natural light. The room next door became my office. It was perfect. I had space to spread out my work, multiple monitors, everything I needed. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. No more cramped spaces, no more noisy neighbors, just me in this beautiful house. Those first few weeks were incredible. I was more productive than ever and genuinely enjoyed being at home. I had video calls with Grandpa every few days to see how he was doing, and he seemed very happy at the retirement home. He had made friends and was receiving good care. Everything was perfect. Too perfect, as I found out about a month after settling in. I was working in my office when I heard cars pulling into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw my parents' car and Clara's old Honda. My stomach sank. They all got out with suitcases. I went downstairs and opened the front door before they could knock. My parents were there with Clara, all holding luggage as if they were planning to stay for a while. "Hi, Anna," my mother said, brushing past me and entering the house. "We heard you're living here now." My father followed, looking around the place as if he were inspecting it. Clara came in last, already pulling out her phone to take pictures. "It's true. Grandpa offered me the house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on? Why do you all have suitcases?" Clara dropped her bags right in the middle of the living room. Aunt Linda told us about your little arrangement. Here, we thought it was time for a family reunion. My mother nodded. This house belonged to my father, which means I have as much right to be here as you do. Besides, look, it has 4 bedrooms, way more space than our apartment, and it's closer to my job. My father added, the commute from our place is killing me. I felt my chest tightening. But Grandpa gave me the house to live in. He said so specifically. He said you could live here, Clara interrupted. He didn't say we couldn't live here too. Come on, Anna, don't be selfish. This place is huge and you're just one person. I wanted to argue, but something in me just shut down. I was always the one who avoided conflict in our family. Maybe they had a point. Maybe it would be nice not to be alone in this big house all the time. Okay, I heard myself say. I guess we can try. Clara clapped her hands. Great. I already called dibs on the room with the best lighting for my TikTok videos. For the first few months, things went smoothly. We had a routine. I stayed in my part of the house most of the time, working in my office during the day. My parents stayed in their area upstairs, and Clara was usually out with friends or locked in her room making videos. We had dinner together sometimes, and it almost felt normal, like maybe this family thing could actually work. I started to think that maybe I had been too hard on them before. Maybe we just needed to live together to remember why we were family. But then the utility bills started coming in. The first electricity bill was almost $300. The water bill was double what it used to be when it was just Grandpa living here. The gas bill for heating was through the roof because now everyone was home all the time, and Clara liked to keep her room at about 25 degrees C. I sat at the kitchen table one night with all the bills spread out in front of me. My parents were watching. TV in the living room, and Clara was upstairs. Guys, I called out. Can you come here for a minute? They came into the kitchen, and I showed them the bills. So all of these are way higher than they used to be, I said. I think we need to figure out how to split them among all of us. My father laughed. Anna, this is your house. Grandpa gave it to you, right? That means you're responsible for it. But you're all living here too. You're using the electricity and water. Clara came downstairs and grabbed a soda from the fridge. What's all this fuss about? Anna wants us to pay her bills, my mother said. That's not what I said. I just think we should split the costs since we're all living here. Clara rolled her eyes. Probabys. Look, nobody forced you to take this house. You wanted to be the homeowner, so you pay the homeowner's bills. That's how it works. But no big deal, my father said. You're the one benefiting from owning the property. We're just guests here. After that conversation, something changed. It was as if they decided I was trying to take advantage of them when I was just trying to be fair. The next week, I noticed they stopped doing their share of the household chores. Dishes piled up in the sink, and when I asked about it, my mother said she was too tired from work. You're home all day anyway, right? She said. It makes sense for you to take care of the house stuff. Then they started making rules. Small things at first, like Clara deciding the living room TV was off limits during certain hours, so she could rehearse her TikTok dances. My father claimed the garage as his workshop space, even though I had been using part of it for storage. But the big confrontation happened about a month later during dinner. We were all sitting around the kitchen table, and my parents started talking about the house's layout. You know, Anna, my mother said, cutting her chicken, I've been thinking about how you're using 2 whole rooms just for yourself. Down here. My father nodded. It does seem like a lot of space for one person, especially when the rest of us are sharing the upstairs. Everyone should have equal rights in this house. My mother continued. You've been using that office for months. Maybe it's time to consolidate and move your work stuff to your bedroom. Clara looked up from her phone. Yeah, and I was looking for a good spot to set up my video equipment. That room has the best natural light in the whole house. I could turn it into a real studio. I felt my face heating up. But I need that office space for my work. I have clients and video calls, and all my equipment is set up there. You can make it work in your bedroom, my mother said. People work from bedrooms all the time. That room would be perfect for my content creation, Clara added. I could really grow my follower count with a setup like that. I looked around the table at all of them. They were all staring at me, waiting for me to agree, as always. So I agreed. I nodded and said, Okay, I'll move my stuff. The following weekend, I spent 2 days relocating my entire office setup to my bedroom. It was cramped and awkward, but I made it work. Clara immediately claimed the room and started painting one wall bright pink for her brand aesthetic. After that, things got worse quickly. It was as if giving up that room was some kind of signal to my family that they could push me even further. A few weeks later, I had my friend Jessica over for dinner. We were sitting in the living room afterward, just chatting and catching up. It was around 9:30 p.m. when my mother came downstairs in her robe. "Anna, can I talk to you?" she said, giving Jessica a look that made it clear she wanted her to leave. Jessica took the hint and said she should head home anyway. After she left, my mother sat down across from me. "We need to talk about your visitors," she said. "They're very noisy and stay too late. Your father and I work hard all day and need rest. We can't have people here making noise until all hours of the night." It was 9:30, Mom, and we weren't being loud. "It doesn't matter. This is a shared living space now, and you need to be more considerate of the rest of us. You can have friends over, just not overnight and not after 8 p.m. on weekdays." I wanted to point out that Clara had friends over all the time, sometimes until midnight, and they were always loud, laughing and playing music in her room. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The rules, apparently, were just for me. A few weeks after that, I was getting ready to make dinner when I realized we had basically nothing. I had been buying groceries for the entire house since my family moved in, which was costing me $400 a week. I made a list and went to the store. When I came back with 6 bags of groceries, my mother was in the kitchen. "Anna, I need to talk to you about this whole cooking situation," she said. I turned. "What's up?" "Well, I've been thinking, and I'm getting pretty tired of cooking for 4 people every night. It's a lot of work, and I'm not getting any younger." "Okay, so maybe we can take turns? Or I can cook more often?" My mother shook her head. "No, I think it would be easier if everyone just cooked for themselves from now on. That way, there's no confusion about who's responsible for what." I felt confused. "But I buy all the groceries, right?" "And you'll keep buying your groceries and we'll buy ours. It'll be much simpler that way." It felt like a punch to the stomach, but I just nodded. "Okay, if that's what you want." The next day I came home from a client meeting to find my father installing a lock on the fridge. "What's that for?" I asked. "Your mother and I decided we need to protect our food," he said without looking up from the lock. "Nothing personal. We just want to make sure everything stays organized." I stood there watching him put this padlock on the fridge door. My own fridge, in my own house. That weekend, I bought a mini fridge and had it delivered to my bedroom. I also installed a lock on my bedroom door. If they wanted to play the security game, I could play too. The next few months were tense. We barely spoke to each other except when necessary. I stayed in my room most of the time, eating meals alone and working in the cramped office setup in my bedroom. Clara's TikTok studio was always blaring loud music, and my parents acted like they owned the place. I started calling Grandpa more often just to vent about what was happening. He always listened patiently, telling me to hang in there, that things would work out. Sometimes I recorded conversations with my family on my phone and sent the audio files to Grandpa so he could hear how they were treating me. "Just be patient, dear," he always said. "Everything will change soon." Then, one Friday at the end of March, I went out with some college friends. We had dinner and drinks, and I got home around 11 p.m. The house was all lit up, which was unusual because everyone was usually asleep by then. I walked in and found my parents and Clara sitting around the dining table with what looked like a fancy meal spread out. There were lit candles and everything. "Perfect timing," Clara said when she saw me. "We were waiting for you." "Waiting for me for what?" "Sit down, honey," my mother said, patting the empty chair. "We're having a family meeting." I felt my stomach sink, but sat down. They were all looking at me with these serious expressions. My father cleared his throat. "Anna, your mother and I have been talking, and we've made a decision about the living situation here. We think this house is really too big for just one person." My mother added, "And with 3 of us here now, it's really getting a bit cramped." I looked around the huge dining room. Cramped? "The thing is," Clara said, "we've been doing some math, and it really doesn't make financial sense for all 4 of us to live in this big house when there's a perfectly good apartment sitting empty." My mother nodded. Our apartment is just sitting there, and we're still paying the mortgage. It's a waste. So we decided, my father said, that it would be better if you moved into our apartment and the three of us stayed here. It's not like we're leaving you homeless, my mother said quickly. Our apartment is perfectly fine. It has 2 bedrooms, which is plenty of space for one person. You'd have more space than you need. But it's on the other side of the city, and it's tiny compared to this place. Size isn't everything, Clara said. Besides, you work from home anyway. Location doesn't really matter for you. My father leaned forward. The point is, Anna, we're still paying the mortgage on that apartment. $850 a month, plus property taxes and insurance. If you moved there, you could take over those payments. But we already paid $50,000 as a down payment, my mother added, so you'd need to reimburse us for that equity we've built. I stared at them. Let me get this straight. I'd be broke and living in a shoebox while you 3 live in Grandpa's house for free? Clara rolled her eyes. Not everything has to be about fairness, Anna. This is what makes the most sense for the family. And if I say no? They all exchanged looks. Then my father spoke. We've already made the decision. You have 1 week to pack up and move out. I felt like I'd been slapped. You're kicking me out? We're offering you a very reasonable living situation, my mother said, but either way, this arrangement isn't working anymore. I got up from the table, my hands shaking. I looked at all 3 of them sitting there, acting like they were being perfectly reasonable, like they weren't trying to steal everything from me. I'm not moving out, and I'm not paying for your apartment. That's insane. Well, then I guess you have 1 week to figure out where you're going to live, my mother said. I went straight to my room, locked the door behind me, and grabbed my phone. I texted Grandpa. They showed their true colors. Within 5 minutes, my phone was ringing. Anna, what happened? Grandpa's voice was full of concern. I told him everything. About the ultimatum, about them wanting me to pay $50,000 and take over their mortgage while they kept his house, about how they'd been treating me for months. I've been sending you those recordings, I said. You heard how they talked to me, but this is too much, Grandpa. They're trying to steal everything from me. There was a long pause. Then Grandpa said, Don't worry about any of this. I'll take care of the situation. Just go to sleep and don't say anything more to them. But Grandpa, trust me, dear. Everything will be fine. The next 2 days were tense. My family kept asking if I'd made a decision about moving out, and I just said I was still thinking about it. They seemed confident that I'd cave, like I always did. Then Saturday morning came. I was in my room working when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window and saw Grandpa getting out of the car with a manila folder in his hands. I heard him knock on the front door, then my mother's voice saying, Dad, what a surprise! Come in, come in. I crept to my bedroom door and opened it slightly so I could hear what was happening in the living room. I need to talk to all of you, Grandpa said. His voice sounded different, colder than I'd ever heard it. Of course, my mother said. Let me call the others. A few minutes later, I could hear them all gathered in the living room. I slipped out of my room and positioned myself at the top of the stairs where I could hear everything. I want someone to explain to me what's going on in this house, Grandpa said. Nothing's going on, Dad, my mother said. We're all just living here together as a family. Is that so? Because I've been getting some very interesting phone calls from Anna, and some very interesting recordings. There was silence. We just thought it would be better if Anna moved into our apartment, my father said. This house is big enough for the 3 of us, and she'd have plenty of space there. And she'd pay $50,000 for the privilege, Grandpa said. Well, we've already invested a lot in that apartment, my mother said. It's fair. Grandpa laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Fair? You want to talk about fairness? Let me ask you something. Did any of you think to check who actually owns this house before you started making all these plans? What do you mean? Clara asked. I mean, did you bother to find out whose name is on the deed? It's your house, Dad, my mother said, and I'm your daughter. Not legally anymore, Grandpa interrupted. He opened the manila folder and pulled out some papers. 2 weeks ago, I transferred the ownership of this house to Anna. She is now the legal owner of this property. I heard my mother gasp. What? Every recording Anna sent me, every story she told me about how you were treating her, I heard it all. So I went to my lawyer and had the deed transferred. This house belongs to Anna now. You can't. Do that, Clara shouted. I already did. It's done, legally and permanently. But Dad, my mother said, and I could hear tears in her voice. I'm your daughter. This house should be mine. You are my daughter, but you're also a bully. All three of you are. You moved into this house under false pretenses, made Anna's life miserable, and now you're trying to steal her house and burden her with your debt. I decided it was my moment. I walked downstairs and entered the living room. My entire family turned to look at me. Hi, Grandpa, I said. He smiled at me for the first time since he arrived. Hi, dear. I turned to my family. I want all three of you out of my house in 24 hours. My mother started crying. Anna, please, we're family. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me. My father just sat there, looking defeated. Clara started yelling, You can't just kick us out. We live here. Actually, she can, Grandpa said. This is her house now. You're trespassing. I'll stay here until they're gone, Grandpa announced. I want to make sure this transition happens peacefully. The next 24 hours were chaotic. My parents packed quietly, my mother crying every now and then. My father kept shaking his head and muttering under his breath. Clara was the worst. She yelled at me, called me selfish and ungrateful, and said I'd regret this. But I didn't regret it. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. By Sunday night, they were gone. I immediately called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. Grandpa stayed for dinner, and we talked for hours. I'm proud of you for standing up to them, he said. I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for believing in me and for the house. I still can't believe you did this. You're the only one in this family who deserves it, Anna. You're kind, you work hard, and you don't try to take advantage of people. In the weeks that followed, my phone kept ringing with calls and messages from my parents. They alternated between trying to guilt-trip me and trying to convince me to let them come back. I ignored everything and eventually blocked their numbers. About a month later, Clara showed up at my door. I'm done with Mom and Dad, she said. I never wanted to kick you out in the first place. That was all their idea. I looked at her standing on my porch. Seriously. They came up with the whole apartment scheme. I only went along with it because I didn't want to cause drama. You called me selfish and ungrateful. I was upset. Look, we're sisters, Anna. Can't we work this out? I promise I'll be different this time. I thought about it for about 2 seconds. No, Clara, I'm done living with family. I'm done with all of this. Sorry, but no. I closed the door and watched through the window as she walked back to her car. My parents tried a few more times over the next year. They sent gifts on my birthday and Christmas, but I sent them all back. They had relatives call me, trying to guilt me into reconciling, but I stood firm. I heard through the family that my parents were telling anyone who would listen about how I treated them unfairly. They called me selfish and ungrateful to anyone who would hear it, but I didn't care. The truth was, they had a chance to live peacefully with me. They could have split the bills, treated me with respect, and we could have been a real family. Instead, they showed me exactly who they really were. Now they're back in their apartment, still paying that mortgage. Claire found a boyfriend and moved in with him, and I'm living in Grandpa's house, my house, exactly as it always should have been.